The old pickup truck's engine coughed and wheezed as Lisa pulled into what should have been the familiar dirt road leading to her grandmother's farmhouse. But there was no dirt road anymore. Instead, smooth black asphalt stretched ahead, lined with perfectly manicured grass and fancy street lamps that looked like they belonged in some expensive movie set. Lisa's hands gripped the steering wheel so tight her knuckles turned white. This couldn't be right. She must have taken a wrong turn somewhere. The GPS on her phone kept insisting she was at the correct address, but everything looked completely wrong. Where were the rolling hills covered in wildflowers that she remembered from childhood visits? Where was the old wooden fence that always needed fixing? Where was the farmhouse where Grandma Rosa had baked cookies and told stories about the old days? She drove slowly down the street, checking house numbers painted on mailboxes that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Each house looked like it came from the same expensive catalog. 2 stories, perfect lawns, 3-car garages, and not a single blade of grass out of place. It was like someone had taken a cookie cutter and stamped out identical mansions as far as the eye could see. The confusion turned to panic when she saw the street sign, Meadowbrook Lane. This was definitely the right place, but everything was completely different. Lisa pulled over and sat in her truck, staring at a house that stood exactly where her grandmother's kitchen used to be. She could almost see the ghost of the old wooden table where they used to shell peas together on summer afternoons. A man in an expensive golf outfit knocked on her passenger window. He looked annoyed, like her beat-up truck was ruining the perfect picture of his neighborhood. Lisa rolled down the window, hoping maybe he could explain what had happened. "Excuse me, miss, but you can't park here," the man said in a tone that suggested he was used to people doing exactly what he told them. "This is a private community. Wellington Estates, you'll need to move along." Lisa felt her heart racing. Wellington Estates? But this is my family's land. My grandmother lived here for 60 years. Rosa Martinez. Maybe you knew her? The man's expression changed from annoyed to something that looked almost amused. "I think you're confused, dear. This development has been here for 3 years. Before that, it was just empty farmland that nobody was taking care of. The county had to step in when the previous owner stopped paying taxes." "That's impossible," Lisa said, her voice getting shaky. "My grandmother never missed a tax payment in her entire life. She was proud of that. And she only died 8 months ago." The man pulled out his phone and made a quick call. Within minutes, a golf cart painted in the same perfect colors as everything else in the neighborhood came driving up. The driver was a woman wearing a blazer with a badge that read HOA President. "I'm Patricia Williams," the woman announced, like she expected Lisa to recognize the name. "I understand there's some confusion here. You're claiming this is your family's property?" Lisa nodded, fighting back tears. "My great-great-grandfather bought this land in 1923. My family has owned it for 100 years. I have all the papers at home. Grandma Rosa just passed away, and I'm here to settle her estate." Patricia and the golf outfit man exchanged a look that Lisa didn't like at all. It was the kind of look that said they knew something she didn't and they weren't planning to be helpful about it. "Well," Patricia said with a fake smile that didn't reach her eyes, "I'm afraid you've been misinformed. This land was legally acquired through proper channels. The previous owner had significant tax debts, and the property went through the appropriate legal process. Everything was done completely above board." Lisa felt like the ground was spinning underneath her. "That's not possible. I was handling Grandma's finances the last 2 years when she got sick. Every tax bill got paid, every single one." "Sometimes these things get complicated," Patricia said, still wearing that awful fake smile. "Perhaps you should speak with a lawyer, but right now you're on private property and I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Lisa looked around desperately, trying to find something, anything, that looked familiar. That's when she saw it. In Yao. The distance past all the identical houses and perfect lawns, there was a massive oak tree. Not just any oak tree. The oak tree. The one her great-great-grandfather had planted when he first bought the land. The one where 4 generations of her family had carved their initials. The one where Grandma Rosa used to sit and tell stories about the old days, but something was wrong with the picture. The tree was surrounded by a parking lot. a fancy parking lot with painted lines and decorative light posts. And next to it stood the biggest, fanciest building in the entire development, a clubhouse that looked like it belonged at a country club. "That tree," Lisa said, pointing. "That's our family tree. Why is it in your parking lot?" Patricia's fake smile flickered for just a second. "I'm not sure what you mean. That's just landscaping around our community center." But Lisa could see something else now. Just beyond the oak tree, there was a small fenced area that didn't match the perfect landscaping everywhere else. It looked older, more weathered, and she knew exactly what it was: the family cemetery where her great-great-grandfather and other relatives were buried. "And that cemetery," Lisa said, her voice getting stronger. "Why did you build your clubhouse next to my family's cemetery?" This time, both Patricia and the golf outfit man looked uncomfortable. The fake smile disappeared completely from Patricia's face. "Look," Patricia said, her voice getting sharper. "I don't know what kind of scam you're trying to pull here, but this conversation is over. Tommy, call security." The golf outfit man, apparently named Tommy, was already dialing his phone. Lisa realized she was about to be in serious trouble if she didn't leave. But as she started her truck, her mind was racing. Something was very wrong here. Her grandmother had been sharp as a tack right up until the end. There was no way she would have let the family land get taken for unpaid taxes. As Lisa drove slowly back through the development, she counted houses. Somebody had built 156 homes on her family's 200-acre farm. Homes that probably sold for $500,000 each. Somebody had made a fortune on her family's land, and they seemed pretty confident that they had every right to do it. But they had made one mistake. They had left the oak tree and the cemetery untouched, and Lisa had a feeling that those two pieces of family history were going to be more important than anyone realized. She pulled out her phone and called the one person she knew who might be able to help, her friend Carmen, who worked as a paralegal at a law firm in the city. Carmen had always said that if something seemed too fishy to be legal, it probably was. "Carmen," Lisa said when her friend answered, "I need help. Something really weird is happening with Grandma's property. Can you recommend a good lawyer? I think somebody stole our family's land and built a whole neighborhood on it." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Carmen said something that gave Lisa the first hope she'd felt all day. "Lisa, honey, if what you're telling me is true, then somebody is about to be in very big trouble. Meet me at my office tomorrow morning, and bring every piece of paper you can find about that property. Every deed, every tax record, every scrap of family history you've got." As Lisa drove away from Wellington Estates, she looked in her rearview mirror at the fancy houses and perfect lawns. Somewhere in there, 156 families were living their lives, probably not knowing that their dream homes might be built on stolen land. But Lisa knew one thing for certain: this wasn't over, not by a long shot. Carmen's law office smelled like old coffee and stress, but Lisa had never been happier to sit in an uncomfortable chair. She had spent the entire night going through every box in her grandmother's house, pulling out documents that went back decades. Birth certificates, property deeds, tax receipts, and even old letters were spread across Carmen's desk like pieces of a puzzle that nobody knew how to solve yet. "Okay, let me get this straight," said Attorney Rodriguez. The lawyer Carmen had called in to help. He was younger than Lisa expected, but Carmen swore he was brilliant with property law. "Your family has owned this land since 1923. Your grandmother never missed a tax payment. And now there's a whole neighborhood where her farm used to be." Lisa nodded, pulling out a manila folder that was so old it was falling apart. "Look at these tax receipts. Grandma kept every single one. Even when she got sick and I started helping with her bills, we never missed a payment. Not once." Attorney Rodriguez put on his reading glasses and started going through the receipts. His eyebrows went up higher with each document he examined. "These are all stamped as received by the county tax office. The latest one is from just 10 months ago, 2 months before your grandmother passed away." Carmen leaned forward. "So if Rosa was paying her taxes right up until she died, how did the county claim she owed back taxes?" "That's exactly what we need to find out," Rodriguez said, already reaching for his phone. "I'm calling the county tax office right now. Something smells really fishy here." The phone call didn't go well. The county clerk insisted that there was no record of tax payments for the Martinez property going back 3 years. When Rodriguez asked to see the documentation, the clerk suddenly got very busy and said they'd have to call back later. "That's weird," Rodriguez said after hanging up. "In 20 years of practice, I've never had a county office refuse to provide basic tax records. They're public information." Over the next few days, Lisa felt like she was living in some kind of nightmare. Every time they tried to get information from the county, they hit a brick wall. Documents were missing, or being reviewed or filed in the wrong department. Phone calls didn't get returned. Appointments got canceled at the last minute. But Rodriguez was like a dog with a bone. He knew other lawyers, had connections with court clerks, and wasn't the kind of person who gave up easily. Slowly, pieces of the puzzle started coming together, and the picture they revealed made Lisa's stomach turn. "Lisa, you need to sit down for this," Rodriguez said when she came to his office on Friday morning. His face was serious in a way that made her heart race. "We found your tax payments," he continued, "all of them. They were deposited into the county's account exactly like they should have been. But here's the problem. Somebody deleted them from the computer system. Not just deleted, completely erased like they never existed." Lisa felt dizzy. How is that even possible? It takes someone with high-level access to the county's computer system. Someone who knows exactly what they're doing. And we found something else. Rodriguez pulled out a stack of papers. "These are the documents that were filed to claim your grandmother's property for unpaid taxes. Want to guess who filed them?" Lisa looked at the signature on the bottom of the page. Richard Blackwood, president of Blackwood Development Company, the same company that built Wellington Estates. So this Blackwood guy somehow made our tax payments disappear from the county records, then filed paperwork claiming Grandma owed back taxes? Lisa asked, her voice getting angry. "It gets worse," Carmen said, pulling out another folder. "I did some digging on Blackwood Development. This isn't the first time they've done this. We found 3 other properties in neighboring counties where the exact same thing happened. Family farms that suddenly had tax problems that nobody could explain, then got taken over by Blackwood." Rodriguez nodded grimly. "And here's the really interesting part. In every case, the county officials who handled the paperwork got new jobs with companies that do business with Blackwood Development. Better jobs with much better pay." Lisa felt sick. "So they're all in on it? The county people are helping him steal land?" "That's what it looks like. But proving it is going to be tricky. These people covered their tracks pretty well." That afternoon, Lisa decided to drive back to Wellington Estates. She needed to see the place again, maybe talk to some of the people who lived there. If 156 families had bought homes on stolen land, they deserved to know the truth. But as soon as she pulled into the development, she knew something was wrong. A security guard in a uniform was waiting by the entrance, and he walked over to her, truck before she could even park. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave," the guard said. "You've been banned from this property." "Banned? By who?" "The HOA board filed a restraining order. You're not allowed within 500 feet of any Wellington Estates property." Lisa couldn't believe what she was hearing. "This is my family's land. Ma'am, if you don't leave right now, I'll have to call the police." Lisa drove away, her hands shaking, with anger. But she didn't go far. She parked on the public road just outside the development and called Rodriguez. "They got a restraining order against me," she told him, "for trying to visit my own family's property." "That's actually good news," Rodriguez said, which confused Lisa completely. "How is that good news?" "Because people who are telling the truth don't usually need restraining orders to keep victims away. They just filed paperwork that basically admits they're worried about you digging into this. That tells me we're on the right track." Over the weekend, Rodriguez worked his connections in the courthouse. What he found made everything make sense in the worst possible way. "The judge who approved the tax seizure of your grandmother's property," Rodriguez told Lisa on Monday morning. "His brother-in-law works for the county planning department. The same department that fast-tracked all the permits for Wellington Estates. And the county clerk who lost our tax records. Her husband got a job as head of security for Blackwood Development right after your grandmother's property was seized." Lisa felt like she was going to be sick. So everybody was getting paid off? It looks that way. But here's where it gets interesting. I found out that Blackwood Development isn't just building houses. They've been buying up farmland all over the state, and they're planning something big. Really big. Carmen pulled out a newspaper article. Look at this. Blackwood just announced a partnership with Megamart Corporation. They're planning to build the largest shopping and entertainment complex in the state. Where? Lisa asked, though she was afraid she already knew the answer. Right where Wellington Estates is now. They're planning to buy out all the homeowners, tear down the houses they just built, and put up a massive commercial development. Lisa stared at the article. The artist's rendering showed a huge complex with shopping centers, restaurants, a movie theater, and a hotel. It was going to be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. So Blackwood stole our land, built houses on it, sold them to families, and now he's planning to kick out those same families and build a shopping mall? Lisa asked. That's exactly what it looks like, Rodriguez said. And the worst part is, the families who bought those houses have no idea what's coming. They think they bought their dream homes. They have no clue that they're about to lose everything. Lisa looked out the window toward Wellington Estates. Somewhere in that development, kids were playing in backyards, families were having dinner together, and people were living their lives. None of them knew that their homes were built on stolen land, and none of them knew that the man who sold them those homes was planning to take them away. What do we do now? Lisa asked. Rodriguez smiled for the first time since this whole mess started. Now we fight back. And I have a feeling that Mr. Blackwood has no idea what he's gotten himself into. Lisa had been staring at the same dusty box for 20 minutes, but she couldn't bring herself to open it. This was the last box from her great-great-grandfather's belongings, the one that Grandma Rosa always kept on the highest shelf in her bedroom closet. Miguel's important papers, Grandma used to call it, but she never really explained what made them so important. Rodriguez had suggested that Lisa go through every single family document one more time. Sometimes the answer is hiding in plain sight, he had said. Old land deals were complicated. Your great-great-grandfather might have been smarter than anyone realized. Finally, Lisa took a deep breath and lifted the heavy wooden lid. The smell that escaped made her think of old churches and forgotten attics. Inside were papers that looked ancient, some written in Spanish, others in English so formal it was hard to understand. At the very bottom was a leather folder tied with a ribbon that had probably been read once upon a time. Inside the folder were the original land purchase documents from 1923. Lisa had seen copies of these before, but never the originals. The paper was thick and yellowed, covered in stamps and seals that looked official and important. But as she read through the dense legal language, something caught her eye that she had never noticed before. There was an extra page attached to the main deed. It was written in different handwriting and looked like it had been added later. Heading read, Additional terms and conditions as requested by purchaser. Lisa squinted at the old-fashioned writing, trying to make sense of words that seemed to twist and turn on the page. Slowly, she began to understand what she was reading, and her heart started beating faster with each sentence. Whereas the purchaser Miguel Martinez has previously suffered financial losses due to fraudulent land dealings in the counties of Riverside and San Bernardino, the document began, and whereas said purchaser wishes to protect his descendants from similar fraudulent schemes, the following conditions are hereby made part of this deed and shall remain binding upon all future transactions involving said property. Lisa's hands were shaking as she read the next part. Should any person or entity attempt to develop, subdivide, or substantially alter the use of said property without the express written consent of Miguel Martinez or his direct descendants, ownership of said property and any improvements thereon shall immediately and automatically revert to the Martinez family. She read it again to make sure she understood correctly. Then she read it a third time, because it seemed too good to be true. Her great-great-grandfather had basically created a legal trap. If anyone tried to develop the land without permission from his family, they would lose everything they built on it, and it looked like this condition was a permanent part of the property deed. Lisa grabbed her phone and called Rodriguez so fast she almost dropped it. "You need to get down here right now," she said when he answered. "I found something big." Rodriguez arrived within an hour, bringing Carmen with him. Lisa showed them the document, watching their faces change as they read through the old-fashioned legal language. "Holy cow," Carmen whispered. "Is this what I think it is?" Rodriguez was reading more carefully, his lawyer brain working through every word. "If this document is legitimate, and if it was properly recorded with the county, then—" He stopped and looked up at Lisa with eyes as wide as dinner plates. "Then what?" Lisa asked, though she thought she already knew. "Then Blackwood Development doesn't own Wellington Estates. You do. You own every house, every street, every blade of grass in that development." The three of them sat in stunned silence for a moment. Then Rodriguez snapped into action. "We need to get to the county courthouse right now. We need to verify that this addendum was properly recorded with the original deed. If it was, then we've got them." The courthouse was one of those old buildings that looked like it had been there since the beginning of time. The records department was in the basement, behind a door that looked like it belonged in a horror movie. The clerk who helped them was a tiny elderly woman who seemed to know where every document in the building was located. "Martinez property deed from 1923, she said, adjusting her thick glasses. "Oh yes, I know exactly where that is. It's in the special collections section because it has some unusual clauses." Lisa's heart jumped. "Unusual clauses?" "Oh yes, dear. Your great-great-grandfather was quite clever. He insisted on some very specific conditions being written into his deed. Most people don't bother reading the fine print, but everything he requested was properly recorded and filed." The clerk disappeared into a maze of filing cabinets and returned with a folder that looked like it might crumble if someone breathed on it too hard. Inside was a copy of the exact same document that Lisa had found in her family's papers. "See, this stamp here," the clerk said, pointing to an official-looking mark at the bottom of the page. "That means this addendum was officially recorded as part of the original deed. It's been legally binding for over 100 years. Rodriguez was practically vibrating with excitement. "Ma'am, does this mean that anyone who develops this property without the family's consent would forfeit their improvements to the Martinez family?" The clerk nodded like she was discussing the weather. "Oh yes, absolutely. It's an automatic reversion clause. Very rare, but perfectly legal. Your great-great-grandfather must have been burned badly by some previous land deal to insist on such strong protections." Lisa thought about all the stories Grandma Rosa used to tell about the early days. Miguel Martinez had come to America with nothing and worked his way up from farm laborer to landowner. But along the way, he had trusted the wrong people and lost 2 smaller properties to men who cheated him with fancy legal tricks. He was making sure it never happened again, Lisa said quietly. Carmen was reading through other documents in the file. "Look at this," she said, holding up another paper. Miguel had the deed reviewed by 3 different lawyers before he signed it, and he paid extra to have copies filed in 2 different counties just in case. Rodriguez was grinning like he had just won the lottery. Blackwood's lawyers never found this because they didn't look hard enough. They probably just checked the basic deed and figured that was enough. "So what happens now?" Lisa asked. "Now we have some very interesting conversations with some very worried people," Rodriguez said. "Because technically, you own 156 houses, a golf course, a clubhouse, and probably the most expensive collection of lawn sprinklers in the county, the Bro." Next morning, Rodriguez called Patricia Williams, the HOA president, and asked for a meeting. He didn't explain why, just said it was regarding the Martinez property claim and that it would be in everyone's best interest to meet as soon as possible. Patricia agreed to meet at the Wellington Estates clubhouse, probably thinking she could intimidate them on her home turf. She brought 2 other HOA board members and someone who introduced himself as the development's lawyer. Rodriguez spread the documents out on the clubhouse conference table like he was dealing cards in the world's most expensive poker game. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said in his most professional voice, "I'd like to discuss the Martinez family's ownership of Wellington Estates." Patricia laughed, but it sounded forced. "We've been through this. That claim has no merit." "Actually," Rodriguez said, sliding the 1923 deed across the table, "it has quite a bit of merit. You might want to read the addendum on page 3. Lisa watched as the color drained from Patricia's face while she read. The development's lawyer grabbed the document and read it twice, then reached for his phone. I need to call Richard Blackwood, he said, his voice shaky. Right now. Oh, you definitely need to call Mr. Blackwood, Rodriguez agreed. Because unless I'm very much mistaken, he's about to discover that he's been building houses on someone else's land for the past 3 years. Lisa looked around the fancy clubhouse with its expensive furniture and perfect decorations. Through the windows, she could see the massive oak tree where her great-great-grandfather used to sit and plan for the future. Miguel Martinez had been gone for decades, but his clever legal trap was about to spring shut on the people who had tried to steal his family's land. And the best part was, they had done it to themselves. The Wellington Estates clubhouse had never been so quiet. Patricia Williams sat frozen in her chair, staring at the 1923 deed like it might disappear if she looked at it hard enough. The development's lawyer was on his third phone call with Richard Blackwood, and from what Lisa could hear, none of those conversations were going well. Mr. Blackwood wants to meet with you immediately, the lawyer finally said, hanging up the phone. His face was pale and sweaty. He's driving over from his office right now. Rodriguez leaned back in his chair with a satisfied smile. That's fine with us. We've got all day. While they waited, Lisa walked over to the clubhouse windows that overlooked the oak tree and the family cemetery. She could see some of the Wellington Estates residents going about their normal Saturday routines. Kids were playing in front yards. Neighbors were chatting over fences, and someone was washing their car in a driveway. None of them had any idea that their entire world was about to change. Lisa, Patricia said suddenly, her voice much softer than before. Those people out there, they're good families. They saved up for years to buy their homes here. They didn't know about any of this legal stuff. Lisa turned around. For the first time since this whole mess started, Patricia looked like a real person instead of just an annoying HOA president. She looked scared and tired. I know, Lisa said quietly. I've been thinking about that a lot. Before Patricia could respond, the clubhouse door burst open like someone had kicked it. Richard Blackwood stormed in, followed by 2 men in expensive suits who were obviously lawyers. Blackwood was exactly what Lisa had expected. Tall, perfectly, dressed and angry in the way that only really rich people could be angry. Where is she? Blackwood demanded, looking around the room. Where's the woman who thinks she owns my development? That would be me, Lisa said, stepping forward. She was scared, but she wasn't going to let this bully see it. Blackwood looked her up and down like she was something unpleasant he had found on his shoe. You've got some nerve, lady. Do you have any idea how much money I've invested in this property? How many jobs this development has created? How many families call this place home? About 156 families, Lisa said calmly. I counted. One of Blackwood's lawyers whispered something in his ear. Blackwood's face got even redder. This is ridiculous, he said, waving his hand at the documents on the table. Some 100-year-old piece of paper doesn't mean anything. I have permits, I have approvals, I have investors who have put millions of dollars into this project. Rodriguez stood up slowly. Mr. Blackwood, would you like to take a look at the deed addendum? Because I think you're going to find it very interesting reading. Blackwood grabbed the document and read it quickly, his lawyers reading over his shoulders. Lisa watched his expression change from angry to confused to something that looked like panic. This can't be legal, he said, but his voice wasn't as confident as before. Actually, it's completely legal, Rodriguez said. Your lawyers should have found this during their title search. It's been on file at the county courthouse for 100 years. One of Blackwood's lawyers was frantically typing on his phone. Richard, we need to talk. Privately. The lawyers huddled in the corner, whispering urgently while everyone else sat in uncomfortable silence. Lisa could hear bits and pieces of their conversation, and none of it sounded good for Blackwood. Finally, they came back to the table. Blackwood looked like someone had punched him in the stomach. Okay, he said, sitting down heavily. Let's say, hypothetically, that this document is valid. What do you want? Lisa looked at Rodriguez, who nodded for her to go ahead. I want my family's land back, Lisa said simply. All of it. Blackwood laughed, but it sounded forced and desperate. You can't be serious. You want me to tear down 156 homes, displace all those families, destroy millions of dollars worth of construction? You should have thought about that before you stole my grandmother's land, Lisa said, her voice getting stronger. We didn't steal anything, Blackwood shouted. We went through proper legal channels. Carmen spoke up for the first time. You mean the legal channels where you bribed county officials to delete tax records and file false documents? Blackwood's lawyers immediately started shushing him, but it was too late. His face had already given away the truth. We can prove all of it, Rodriguez added. The deleted tax payments, the fake liens, the payoffs to county employees. We've got enough evidence to put you in prison for the next 20 years. The room got very quiet again. Lisa could hear the air conditioning humming and the sound of kids playing outside. Normal life continuing while inside this room everything was falling apart. What do you want? Blackwood asked again. But this time his voice was barely above, a whisper. Before Lisa could answer, Rodriguez pulled out another folder. Actually, Mr. Blackwood, there's something else you should know about. We've been doing some research into your future plans for Wellington Estates. He spread out newspaper clippings and business documents. Your partnership with Megamart Corporation. Your plans to buy out all the homeowners and tear down the development to build a shopping complex. You were planning to screw over these families anyway, weren't you? Patricia gasped. What? Richard, is that true? Blackwood couldn't look at her. It's just business, Patricia. The retail development would bring jobs to the area. Jobs? Patricia stood up, her voice getting louder. What about our homes? What about our community? You sold us these houses knowing you were going to tear them down? Other residents had started gathering outside the clubhouse windows, probably wondering why there were so many cars in the parking lot. Lisa could see them pointing and talking, to each other. This is perfect, Rodriguez said with a grin. Lisa, you should know that according to the original deed, you don't just own the land. You own everything built on it. Every house, every street, every mailbox. Blackwood's head fell into his hands. This is impossible. You can't just take $100 million development. Actually, we can, Rodriguez said. But Lisa has a better idea. Don't you, Lisa? Lisa had been thinking about this moment for days. She looked out at the families who were starting to gather outside. People who had worked hard and saved money to buy homes that were built on stolen land. Here's what's going to happen, Lisa said, looking directly at Blackwood. You're going to transfer ownership of every property in Wellington Estates to me, just like the law says you have to, but I'm not going to kick out any of the families who live here. Blackwood looked up with confusion. What? I'm going to offer every family the chance to buy their home directly from me, at fair market value. Not the inflated price you charged them, but what the houses are actually worth. And for families who can't afford to buy, I'll offer long-term lease agreements with reasonable rent. Patricia's eyes were getting teary. You would do that? Even after everything we put you through? Lisa nodded. These families are victims too. You didn't know your homes were built on stolen land. But Blackwood did, and he was planning to kick you all out anyway. Rodriguez pulled out a legal document that was already prepared. Mr. Blackwood, you have two choices. You can sign this ownership transfer agreement and walk away from this mess, or we can take this to court and let a judge decide. But if we go to court, we're also filing criminal charges for fraud, bribery, and conspiracy. Blackwood looked at his lawyers, who both nodded grimly. He was trapped and he knew it. If I sign this, what happens to the criminal charges? Rodriguez looked at Lisa, who thought for a moment. If you sign over the properties and pay restitution to cover the legal costs and property taxes that were illegally seized, we'll focus on the civil case instead of the criminal one. It wasn't perfect justice, but it was practical justice. Blackwood would lose everything he had built on stolen land. The families could keep their homes and Lisa would get her family's property back. Blackwood picked up the pen with a shaking hand. Outside, more neighbors were gathering, probably, sensing that something important was happening. You have no idea what you're doing, he said as he signed his name. Running a development like this takes experience. You'll never be able to manage it. Lisa smiled. Mr. Blackwood, my family has been taking care of this land for 100 years. I think we can figure it out. 3 months later, Lisa stood under the same oak tree where her great-great-grandfather used to sit and plan for the future. But now, Instead of looking out over empty farmland, she was watching kids play in a community garden that hadn't existed before. The sound of laughter mixed with the noise of hammers and saws from the construction happening near the old family cemetery. The court case had been faster than anyone expected. Judge Morrison took one look at the 1923 deed and the evidence of corruption and made his ruling within a week. Lisa Martinez was the legal owner of all 200 acres and everything built on them. Richard Blackwood's development company was ordered to pay $3 million in restitution for the fraudulent tax seizure and legal costs. But the real work had started after the court ruling. "Miss Lisa," called out 8-year-old Tommy Chen, running up to her with dirt on his knees and a huge smile on his face. "Look what we found in the garden." He held up a rusty horseshoe that was probably older than anyone currently living in Wellington Estates. Lisa smiled and ruffled his hair. "That probably belonged to one of my great-great-grandfather's horses," she told him. "He had 3 of them when he first bought this land." Tommy's eyes got wide. "Really? Can I keep it?" "Of course. It's part of the history of this place. And you live here now, so it's your history too." The past 3 months had been the busiest of Lisa's life. True to her word, she had offered every family in Wellington Estates the chance to buy their home at fair market value. Most had jumped at the opportunity, especially after they learned what Blackwood had really been planning for their neighborhood. The families who couldn't afford to buy right away were given lease-to-own agreements with payments lower than most apartment rents. Nobody was forced to leave and nobody lost their home because of the legal battle. Patricia Williams had become one of Lisa's biggest supporters. It turned out that when she wasn't defending a corrupt development company, Patricia was actually pretty nice. She had volunteered to help organize the community meetings where Lisa explained the new ownership structure to all the residents. "At first, people were scared," Patricia had told Lisa. "They thought you were going to kick them out or raise their costs. But when you showed them what Blackwood was really planning, they realized you had saved their homes, not threatened them." Lisa walked over to where a group of residents were building raised garden beds near the community center. What used to be an empty lawn was becoming a place where neighbors could grow vegetables together and kids could learn about farming. "How's it looking, Mr. Peterson?" Lisa asked the retired contractor who had volunteered to oversee the garden project. "Better than I expected," he said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "We should have the first phase done by next weekend, and Mrs. Rodriguez already has tomato plants ready to go in the ground." Lisa had discovered that Wellington Estates was full of people with skills and talents that had never had a chance to shine. When you gave people a real stake in their community instead of just a bunch of HOA rules to follow, amazing things started happening. The biggest change was happening around the family cemetery. Lisa had decided to turn the area into a proper memorial park, with walking paths and benches where people could sit and think. The old headstones were being carefully restored, and a local artist was creating a bronze plaque that told the story of the Martinez family and the land's history. "Lisa, you've got visitors," called Carmen, who had become the unofficial coordinator for all the community projects. She pointed toward the main entrance where a news van was pulling up. Lisa sighed. The story of Wellington Estates had attracted media attention from all over the state. "Family outsmarts corporate land grab with century-old legal trap" had been the headline in the biggest newspaper. The story had been picked up by television stations, online news sites, and even a podcast about property law. The reporter was a young woman named Jessica, who seemed genuinely interested in the human side of the story, not just the legal drama. "Ms. Martinez," Jessica said as her cameraman set up equipment, "it's been 3 months since you won your case against Blackwood Development. How has life changed for you and the residents of Wellington Estates?" Lisa looked around at the community garden, the kids playing, the neighbors working together on projects. "It's changed in ways I never expected," she said. "I thought I was just fighting to get my family's land back, but what I found was a whole community of people who wanted the same thing I did, a place where families could put down roots and build something together." "What happened to Richard Blackwood and the county officials who were involved in the fraud?" "Blackwood lost his development company and had to pay millions in restitution. 3 county officials were fired and are facing criminal charges. The County has also created new oversight procedures to make sure this kind of corruption can't happen again. Jessica nodded. And what about your plans for the future? Are you going to expand the development or make other changes? Lisa had thought about this question a lot. She could easily sell some of the land to developers and become very wealthy. But that wasn't what her great-great-grandfather had intended when he created his legal trap. We're focused on making this a real community, Lisa said. We've started a tool library where neighbors can borrow equipment instead of everyone buying their own. We're planning a community workshop where people can learn skills like carpentry and car repair, and we're working with the local school district to create educational programs about sustainable farming and local history. After the interview, Lisa walked back to the oak tree. She had installed a bench there, and it had become her favorite spot to sit and think. Carmen joined her, carrying 2 cups of coffee from the new community center. You know, Carmen said, I think your great-great-grandfather would be proud of what you've done here. Lisa nodded, looking at the bronze plaque that would soon tell Miguel Martinez's story. He was cheated twice before he bought this land. He could have become bitter and just focused on protecting himself. But instead, he created something that would protect his family for generations. And now you're using that protection to help other families too. A group of teenagers walked by, heading toward the community center where they were working on a mural that told the history of the land. One of them waved at Lisa, and she waved back. 6 months ago, these kids had been strangers living in a fancy development. Now they were part of something bigger. Lisa's phone buzzed with a text message from Rodriguez. Good news, it said. The county has agreed to your proposal for the community land trust. It's official. Wellington Estates can never be sold to commercial developers. The community is protected forever. Lisa smiled and showed the message to Carmen. The community land trust had been her idea, inspired by her great-great-grandfather's forward thinking. By putting the ownership structure into a trust controlled by the residents themselves, she had made sure that no future developer could ever pull another Blackwood-style scheme. So what's next? Carmen asked. Lisa looked out over the community that had grown from tragedy and corruption into something beautiful and genuine. Kids were playing in the garden, neighbors were chatting over the fence, and someone was grilling burgers for an impromptu block party. Next, we just keep building, Lisa said. Keep making this place better for the families who live here. Keep honoring the people who came before us. And keep making sure that when the next generation inherits this land, they'll have the tools. They need to protect it. As the sun set behind the oak tree, Lisa thought about her grandmother Rosa, who had never lived to see justice done but had raised a granddaughter strong enough to fight for it. She thought about Miguel Martinez, whose clever legal trap had waited 100 years to spring. And she thought about the 156 families who now had something that Blackwood's development could never have given them. A real home in a real community, built on a foundation of justice instead of fraud. The Martinez family's 100-year trap had worked perfectly. But the best part wasn't catching the people who had tried to steal their land. The best part was what grew in the place where the trap had been set.